So in this video I'm going to be showing you how I'm starting a new worm bed using a builder's bulk bag. This is the kind of thing that you'll get sand and shingle and stuff delivered in sort of ton quantities. Heavy duty woven bag. I've got a few of these knocking about the Holding from things I've had delivered over the years, and I just thought I'd give it a go. So it's going to be the sort of bin that you have to fill from the bottom to the top, and then it'll be a scrape that top bit off with the worms and then shovel it out sort of job. But I'm fine with that. But what I'm going to actually use, the worms I'm going to use to start this bed are the worms from my outdoor bed. Now I've had a few problems, a few issues with that bed, which I will explain in a minute, but I've got to move it, and so whether I'm going to start it again or not, I don't know. Like I say, I'll explain what's happened with that in a minute, but I'm going to rescue all the worms from there and put them into this bed, and that is the plan going forward, going into this winter really. So I started this outdoor bed last year, and it was a bit of an investment. I spent about £280 on these blocks. That isn't a problem. This is a small holding. If I end up not doing this, then I'll use these blocks to create some raised beds, or they'll always come in handy, so I'm not bothered about that. It's just a bit disappointing that it hasn't really got off to a flying start, and I've had various problems. So I had a bit of a dig through it the other day, and all the roots from my raspberries that I've got on this side have just headed right for the compost. And once you get down about 8 inches into the bed, it's just a mat of raspberry roots. They've just grown right into it, and I've even got some raspberry suckers coming out in the bed and between the blocks. So that's a bit of a nightmare. But it's strange. The worms did really well to begin with. I lost quite a few. They were coming out the sides, and I could see where the birds had been pecking at them, and I had to net all around the sides, and that made it a bit difficult to get into because it's quite tight anyway. So it was a bit of a pain from the start, but since then I've given it the chance to build up. I've been feeding it the same as I feed my other beds, and it's just quite strange. I'm not 100% on what the problem is, but there's a lot of young worms, there's cocoons, but all of the adult worms just seem to leave. And I just think it's because of where it is. It's set in an area where there's nice deep wood chip all around it, and then you've got obviously my compost beds, the no-dig beds all around too, and the worms can just freely leave. And I think that's the problem. Had it been undercover and the soil around it was rock hard and dry, then they wouldn't want to leave. They'd want to stay in the moist bed with the feed. Or if it was on a concrete floor, you know, etc., I think it would have been fine. I think because of where it is, surrounded by wood chip, they're just leaving, and they're leaving in their droves, and it's just not building up the kind of numbers that I need for it to really work well. So for now, I've got to move it anyway, because these roots are a real problem from these raspberries. So even if I do try it again, I'm probably going to move it over to the side there where there's nothing planted, and I'll either have to think about putting it on a concrete base or something else. I don't really know. I'm going to rethink it, but what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to take any worms that I can find in here. There's a good lot of compost, so I'll have a sift through. There is, like I say, there's a lot of young worms, so I will get them out, but I'm also doing my winter worm breeding, so that can be used as well come the spring to really give the builder's bag a head start. But for now, I'm kind of just giving up on this bed. What I'm going to do is take the blocks away after I've sieved through it, and I will just leave this pile of compost here, and I'll rake that out down the middle and just create myself an extra little veg bed down the middle here where I can grow some stuff in the summer. So it's not a problem. It's fine where it is for the compost. The blocks will come in handy anyway, and like I say, I can use any of the young worms to just get this bed started now. So that's the plan. So the new worm bin is as simple as it gets really. 1 ton builder's sack, square pallet, not a Euro pallet. I think it will probably hang over the sides of one of those narrow Euro pallets. So it's a square pallet, just one of these temporary fencing stakes with the little hook on top, little metal stake. I've got a few of those knocking about, and I've just knocked one in front and back each corner, and that just allows me to put the handles up, holds the bag open, make it easier to fill. Obviously I'll put some plastic or shade netting over the top to stop the light, but also to stop birds getting in and hooking out at my worms. Now the idea is it is a woven material, so even though it's tightly woven and it will hold moisture, if there's any standing water, if it gets a little bit wet in there, it should freely drain. When you get bags of sand delivered and they're sopping wet, you can see where they're leaking out the bottom, so they do allow the flow of moisture through. So the idea is that I will just build it up in layers from the bottom. When I get right to the top, obviously when it's fully stretched out, it's fairly tall, it's probably about 3.5 foot deep. So I will just dig off the top 6 or 8 inches with all the worms in, put that into another container whilst I empty the bag, or I can put it straight into a new bag and just start new bin, and then I can just literally shovel out the remaining compost that is underneath that. Couldn't be simpler really, and it's zero cost. Already had this bag. Now if you haven't got a builder's bag and you want to give this a go, you can buy a builder's bag. I think they're about 10 or something for a brand new bag. You can order them online, but it's the way to go. I mean, it's as cheap as chips really. So yeah, this is what I'm gonna have a go at doing. So I'm actually quite impressed with the amount of worms I'm getting out of the outdoor bed. There's no question that I've got to move it, because there is just so many raspberry roots in there, and as I'm digging down nearer the front, there's a whole load of new raspberry shoots, about 8 of them I found, all coming up. So it's just going to be a problem. It was a bit of a silly place to put it with raspberries either side. It's just going to create nothing but a nightmare. But there's actually quite a lot more worms than I realised. So what I've been doing is every time I'm here the last couple of days, I've just been going through and forking through it and just digging out worms. I've just got another probably 300 or 400 now. They're all quite small. I don't know if you'll sort of see those, but I'm just picking out some of the litter that they're in, the bedding that they're in the bed. But there's still quite a few adults. The adults seem to be lower down, like about a foot deep in the bed, which is a bit strange. But then that could be where the last of the winter worms from winter leaves that I bedded them up with last year, there was still a bit of those in there, and that seemed to be where the adults were. So yeah, quite happy. Not quite the failure I thought, but it's still no question that I've got to move it. So obviously doing this bed is what I'm gonna do. So all I'm doing is I'm gonna leave the outdoor bed there for the next month probably, and just every time I'm here I'll have a little hook through it with a fork and just get out every worm that I can. Even if I'm seeing the cocoons, I'm even picking those out as well. And then all I'm doing is I'm putting those in here, and I'm just putting with them some of my compost, but also as the bedding. This is just leaves. This is a mixture, half and half, of year-old leaf mould and shredded leaves that I've collected this year, just mixed. So this is the bedding, and I'm just basically giving them a little bit of compost on top, and I shall just do that for the next few weeks. Get out every worm and cocoon that I can find in that bed, just forking through it or cutting the raspberries back that are growing into it. And I'd like to get this bed, because it's quite late in the year. We're sort of coming towards the last week or so of October. I'd like to get this bag probably a good 18 inches to 2 foot deep, just so that hopefully it will get through the winter then. Obviously this is a bit more exposed and could potentially freeze if we get some really cold weather. I could put some fleece around it, perhaps some straw, stuff like that. But obviously it is a bit more of a worry, because it's its own separate thing. But it's not sort of, the outdoor bed survived a -14, but that's in contact with the ground and thick concrete blocks either side. So it's a bit more of a worry doing this, but if I can build it up enough, hopefully it'll be okay, but we'll see how we go. So all I'm doing, every time I have a sift through and get a few more worms out, I'll go down and just pull back the top layer of the leaf mould, and I'll put the worms on top. And I'm getting a good 300 or 400, maybe more each time I'm having a hook through, so it's actually going to give it a real good start. So I'll just plonk the worms on there, and each time I'm just building up the depth with a bit more of the leaves. So I'll just put these over, and whenever I put new worms on, I'll just hook it back a bit. I just want to make sure that there's enough bedding to give some sort of protection against the cold in the winter. So I'll do that each time, and hopefully build the levels up a bit by the time the weather gets too bitter. So I've spent the last few days spending a good hour a day sifting through the bin, and just a rough guesstimate, I reckon I've got between sort of 3,500 to 5,000 worms out. So really quite happy. When I first started, I kind of thought I'd struggle to maybe get 1,000. So it's got off to a real good start. And I haven't raked the bed out yet. I'm leaving it there, and I've actually put some, Halloween's coming up, I'm going to put some pumpkin slices on top of the bed, and that the worms love pumpkin. That'll bring some of the worms to those pieces of pumpkin, and then I'll keep sifting through it and try and use pumpkin to get the worms up, to get every worm I can out and into here. But basically I've been putting a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of leaf mould each time I put some worms in, and I'm up to about 10 inches deep now. It's actually surprising how much this bag holds. I've made sure I've pushed it out sort of to hold the bottom out nice and tight, and as I go I'll make sure I sort of pull it up and that it's properly filled. But it's actually looking really good, and I'm hoping it's going to do a good job. But what I will do, once I've got through that bed as much as I think is necessary, every worm I can find, I will start getting this ready for winter, and I'll bed it up with some leaves. I might even fill it right to the top with leaves just to give it some insulation, and maybe put some straw or something around it, some fleece, I don't know, just in case. And then come the spring I can hook out any leaves down to where the worms are and sort of start feeding it and go from there. But anyway, I will keep you updated. Like I say, it's a new thing for me using a bag like this. But also what you can do is I have these smaller bags. So if you wanted to do a bag like this, these are the 120 litre bags that I use for my collecting leaves and grass clippings and things like that. And I think I pay, last time I bought some was about a year ago, I think they were £15 for 5, if I remember rightly. So you could always do a 120 litre bag, or have 5 of them on the go. I might even try some smaller ones too, so that is another option, to do it this way but with a smaller bag, or even using the potato grow bags, things like that. It's all the same sort of idea, just a bag that is permeable and you fill from the bottom to the top. So anyway, like I say, I'll keep you updated on how it performs and hopefully how it goes through the winter. But anyway, that's it for today, and we will see you next time, guys. Take it easy.